Welcome, I'm Lizzie Brooks, and this is where muscle meets mindful and seriously good yoga isn't too serious. Today is yoga for a terrible day. So we've all had terrible days, and I think what better to help a terrible day in any small way than actually getting some movement, some breath, reconnecting, and taking care of ourselves. Not only our bodies, but our minds and spirits as well. So thank you so much for choosing my channel, and let's go and join each other on our mats. So I invite you to use a blanket or a towel, something to sit your sitting bones up on just a little bit more, and find a tall spine and your breath. It's real easy to complicate things. Let's not. Let's simplify. We're just going to be a body breathing. And a lot of times teachers will say, try not to control the breath, but actually science shows that just by focusing on your breath, it's hard not to start voluntarily controlling it. When it's involuntary, when you're not thinking about it, it's a little more out of control. When we're voluntarily thinking about it, we tend to change it a little bit. Just do your best to get out of the way of the breathing and let your nervous system calm down. So getting out of fight or flight and into the parasympathetic nervous system. Bring your hands together to your heart. You might elongate the back of your neck just a little more inward focus. Take a full deep inhalation and sigh out. From here, set any intention for today's practice. So whatever you need to bring you a little bit more clarity, a little bit more grounding, more calm. Maybe it's a word, bring that in. Inhale again fully. And then sigh, shake off all the clutter. Shake off the clutter of the day. Maybe let the neck roll around. Just notice where you might have been holding on to some unneeded tension and let that go. And then we'll get real close to the ground by coming into child's pose. So if you like to pad your knees, I recommend that. Together or separated with the knees, reach the arms way forward this time. Put your hands on the ground and feel that sensation of placing the hands down. And reach your sitting bones back and maybe add a little bit of a rock side to side, taking one side of the ribs down, the other one up, and then reversing that back and forth. So we want to make room for more breath through the rib cage, through the lungs, through the spine. Rise up to all fours, knees underneath you, and begin to press into the floor. Hug the core musculature back, so the organs rather towards the spine. Drape the head, drape the tail, and then take that in the opposite direction. You don't have to go too far. Don't want you to feel like it's too condensed at the lumbar. And just going back and forth slowly. Maybe the exhale has you rounding forward, and the inhale has you lifting the heart and the hips. And come into neutral and just start to rock a little side to side. Now, some of us are going to say, yeah, that's fine, I need to stay there. Some of us, if it feels okay, slow it down, and you can even take the knees closer together and move your outer hip, outer glutes off to the side, to center, off to the side and center. Opening again that side body and letting the scapula, the shoulder blade, actually lift and delaminate from the back of the rib cage. And come back to the middle. First downward facing dog can go here or another child's pose, so you choose. If you want to get a little more into the hamstrings, the back of the legs, the calves, Achilles tendons, then you might go for that downward facing dog. Again, really connected. The brain is very intimately connected with the fingertips. So rooting down into the fingertips gently, also the knuckles, or the first finger and thumb knuckles primarily, because they tend to lift. Inhale. Exhale, lower slowly all the way down. And take your blanket or your towel and roll it a little bit or a lot. The higher the roll is, the more opening it's going to be for the back of the leg. The lower the roll, it's not going to be as opening. But if a forward fold's already very difficult, you can even just step to the edge of it like so. So I'll show you. You're going to step onto that roll or maybe just the edge and let your heels come down and the arch of the foot all the way to the toes is on. So you're just lengthening down a little bit here. And yes, it's a balance. For those of you who need more, you'll roll it up a little bit more and come here. Less of the heel will be down. Breathing here. We're just opening the back, expanding through the back of the legs. Soften the knees a little bit. Inhale. Exhale, soften the arms down. Inhale, reach them up. And exhale, come to a little baby fold with the knees bent, hands on the thighs, or any more of a fold. Maybe you're using blocks under the hands or fingertips to the floor. This again is gonna really bring us into lengthening the back of the legs. If we've already had a really terrible day, we don't want to overdo this. We never want to overdo this, but especially then, we want to give soft opening. Maybe bend the knees more. Breathe here. We're just bringing space to the body gently. And then walk backwards off of that prop and move it to the side. Walk your hands forward and your feet back, downward facing dog. First plank pose, either shoulders over the wrists and hips high up, knees up, or staying with that same positioning, but letting the knees come down. Breathing, choosing which one's best for you, and just recognizing that you have a lot of strength. Draw your breath in and out, so don't hold the breath. And back to downward facing dog. Now we're gonna do a circular movement here. It's not a perfect circle, so don't get stuck on that. You're gonna bend your knees, shift everything forward. So torso comes forward, shoulders more over the wrist. Then straighten the legs more, take the hips back, heels are high, and then do that again. So what I'm doing is, and maybe you don't even have to follow my exact direction, but whatever feels like you're doing a little bit of a churn, where you're bending the knees, then take the torso more forward, almost to plank, hips up and back, almost downward dog, and then complete that cycle again. We're gonna start to wake up the heart more with this movement, cardiovascular system, and that's what we're looking for. Now, if you wanna make this a little harder in the upper body, you can add bending the elbows ever so slightly. Instead of taking them straight to the sides, think of them coming more towards the floor, or keep the elbows straight for a little less upper body work, but still upper body work. And then pause it in a downward dog, but don't pause your breathing. Inhale. And sigh out. Let your heels lift, not too high, but kind of just naturally. Bend the knees and walk your hands back to your feet. Let your arms dangle and your head dangle. Scoop out through the front body and round all the way up. Try to feel your way into alignment. And bloom the shoulders out a little bit when you get to the top, a little more expansive through the heart. Deep breath in, and shake that off. Then we'll walk to the top of the mat, but you can choose how you get there. So you can just walk regularly. You can do a couple little hops if you want to bring some spring action in. You could do a march. But anyway, play with it. Get something out of your transitions. I'm always trying to tell my students, get something out of the transitions, okay? Because you're doing them, you might as well. Let's inhale and reach up. Exhale, fold. Think about that fold you did before where you might decide again to bend the knees any amount. Ardha Uttanasana, which means halfway up, but take a full inhale, hands glide the shins maybe. And then exhale, fold. Take it back into a plank pose. Now, from this plank pose, you'll lower, even if you didn't the first time, you'll lower your knees down and then lift them back up. Lower them down, maybe just to hover, maybe to tap, and back up. So now we're going for really accentuating the work at the lower and deep abdominals and continuing to protect the low back by not sagging the low back down and doing it here, but really puffing up at the kidneys and creating some strength. One more time. And then lower the knees and choose your child's pose. Get off of the wrists, roll them out. So sometimes when you think about yoga for a terrible day, you think, oh, we're not going to do any strengthening, we're just going to do stretching. But studies show that if you do the opening and the strengthening, it gives even more of that sense of accomplishment, of getting a little bit deeper into the body, of reminding yourself that you're so capable. So we're doing both, okay? And pause and take breaks or skip things as necessary. Deep breath in, big sigh out. So on this malasana, squat pose, where we're gonna open the back body and the hips and the inner thighs, feel free to use a blanket under your heels, so not under the arches and the balls of the feet like we did earlier, but actually under the heels, which looks like this. This is what I would choose if your heels can't easily come down to the floor when you're in this posture, knees and toes pointed the same direction, or use some sort of something to sit on, maybe a block, okay? So again, you make the right choices for you. Root into your feet and come to your breath. So I have my hands at my heart. That's an option. You can always put your hands down, or maybe even for more grounding, put the palms all the way down. We're gonna collapse this. So we're gonna go from very, very soft, a little more yin, to more accentuated, a little more work, and that yang or yang. Inhale, and then exhale, start to collapse down, round, round, round. Drape the head, back body will open. Inhale, start to build back up. Hands could be at the heart or again on the floor. Exhale, round in, round, deep, deep, deep. Drape the head, that's critical. Inhale, come all the way back up. And then take a sigh. Fingertips come down. Turn your toes forward, and then this time with your feet a little wider than last time, round all the way back up. That recreation, that reminder that you do have alignment, that you are fully connected. All the way to the top, heart open, hands to the heart. Deep breath in, and let's shake off the clutter again. Move your blanket or towel out of the way, and we're going to start with some squat movements with the breath, okay? So just think about linking these movements together, bringing focus. So just start first with a little bend and straighten of the knees. And I'm just taking my hands forward and back as I do that. And then if you want a little bit more, you can hinge, instead of the knees coming so far forward, hinge the hips, whoop, don't fall back, hinge the hips a little further back, and maybe press a little further back. So we start to incorporate reaching the arms forward with an elbow bend, like so, and then pressing to get more of that expanse at the chest. And you can go way into it in both directions if you want more work. If you want a little work, just make it soft like this, just little, okay? You've had a tough day. We don't want to aggravate you. All right. And then from here, hold in your squat, wherever that is. Lift your lowest part of your abdomen off of the thigh. So if you're kind of collapsed here, find a little more elongation of that lumbar. And then reach your arms forward, shoulder height. Optional lift of the heels. If balance isn't working today, just root those heels down. And with or without the heels lifted, come all the way to a standing position. Again, heels can go down at any time. Reach. And then float the arms down. Roll the shoulders back and down a few times. Go wide with your feet. We're gonna go into a goddess squat. So we were a little more internally rotated. Now we're gonna go externally rotated, but I don't wanna see you like this. Sometimes I see people in a tightrope that might not feel good for the inner knee, and also you're going to not be as balanced. So maybe 45, 30 degrees. Again, knees and toes tracking like you did in your malasana. Now, some of us are gonna stay right here and breathe. Some of us are going to want to turn your left set of fingertips down, drop in, drop that left shoulder in and down and maybe over to the right side. Breathing here, opening through the inner thigh and coming up. Other side, dropping the right set of fingertips down, taking that right shoulder, pointing it down, and then maybe over to the left knee. Other elbow is bent up, and both fingertips can point down or however you like that. And both sides, so you're just tracking the torso either middle or over to the other knee. And other side. Fingertips as feels good for the shoulder. You're actually rolling that shoulder in all the way up. Well, we've had about enough of goddess squat, so let's come all the way back to standing. Turn your toes forward. Take a deep inhale and reach up, and exhale into your fold. Now, fold might be hands on blocks or fingertips, and any amount of a walk down. Let's not stress ourselves out. So go to something that's attainable and breathe there. If you like a little movement, add some movement. Breathing slow and steady. And if it's not slow and steady, then just find it when you can find it. Take a moment, say, oh, I wasn't slow and steady. Come back. And transition to the top of your mat with your right toes forward and your left leg back. Breathing here. Lower the back knee and put both hands on the inside of your right arch. If that back knee is a little bothersome, you can roll your mat over again or add that padding underneath the knee. And blocks can also be under the hands. Breathing here. Now draw your pelvis enough forward that you feel you're getting access to a stretch in the front of the left hip. Once you have that, you're going to begin to drape your head down and breathe there. This is a weird one, right? Because we're used to going, oh, opening. We're actually going to drape the head down like we did in our malasana. We're going to use that weight to help give us access to a different stretch across the front of the left hip. Breathing here. If you want, you can come lower, even onto a block with the forearms, or all the way down. I don't want you to push it. If this is too deep of a stretch, you're gonna feel like you're in fight or flight. It's not gonna be helpful to create a better day. So go to where it feels right, and then drape the head, breathe. From wherever you were, slowly come all the way back up. Take that right hand on the outside of the right foot, shift your hips back a little bit, and then let that right knee come in. Here's where you get to choose child's pose or downward dog. And if you like vinyasa and you take that chaturanga, up dog, down dog, or some variation of that, of course you can put that into this practice anywhere that feels good. Just as long as you don't feel like you have to, but that it would actually be beneficial. And then from here, back to all fours, let's take the left foot forward and come into a lunge for a moment, just to balance ourselves out. Come into that back knee lifted for a moment like we did when we transitioned before. And then lower the back knee. Put the left hand to the inside of the left arch. Walk the left foot forward any amount and allow the pelvis to travel with you, not to the point of collapsing at the lumbar, but just so much that you aren't collapsed here, not overlifting, and you're feeling a stretch across the right hip. And then here's where that magic of just draping the head comes in. Palms can be down. Drape the head down. So I felt it a lot more on the other side because of the tension in my hips are different, and most of us have that. And so I'm going to continue to walk a little more forward on this, and then maybe come down onto a block with the forearms or the full forearms and hang the head down. And just give way to the breath. Easing your way out, hand on either side or hands on either side. Shift yourself back. You might have to slide that foot in a little bit and then come to all fours. Well, downward dog, vinyasa, or child's pose. I'm gonna go with a child's pose with my knees together. I usually choose knees apart, but that's just bringing me a little more to my midline right now, and that feels good to me, so that is what I'm going to choose. Breathing. And then from here, coming all the way up, come into a high kneeling position, tuck your toes, make sure you're not reaching heels out or in, but more so straight back. Bring your hands to your waist, then draw your thumbs a little closer together, draw the elbows closer together, shoulder blades onto the back. Expansion through the sternum here. It's a little weird, like how often do you just walk into a room like this? Probably not that often, but we're just opening the front body and we were just condensed on one side of each hip for a moment, so now we're opening equally. Inhale. And exhale, neutralize the spine, shake out the arms. Okay, so getting into the quads, we're gonna let our arms come forward as we hinge our hips back and hover them over the heels. And then again, we're gonna go for a press. So this is similar to what we did in our squat and then press. This time it's a hip hinge to hover and reach with the arms and then press back open the heart. If this is bothersome to the knee joints, then you are going to do arms reach forward, arms press back without the hip hinge. And then choose. Does it feel better to do the inhale as you hinge back or as you come up? Okay, there's no hard set rule about which breath you put with which movement, and sometimes you'll be doing a few breaths with different movements. That's okay too. Just attempt to be connected to it and slow it down. One more time, hover and press. You can either go back to the thumbs together, elbows back, shoulders back, or if it feels okay, interlace your fingers, roll your shoulders back, and then take those knuckles down towards the floor. Lift the sternum. You don't have to lift the head, especially if that feels like you are collapsing at the lumbar or it doesn't feel good for the neck. Inhale here. And exhale, you can come to classic child's pose, a forehead hover or forehead down with the hands at the waist, or forehead comes closer to the knees and the hips come up as the arms come up. Okay, so a rabbit pose variation. Child's pose, hip hinge with a little more core and glute work, or shoulder work, you're more on the crown of the head as the hips lift. Breathing here. If you have neck issues, please choose the child's pose. And then slowly drawing the hips back, arms down. Everybody, child's pose, like we started, really walking forward, and we'll take those lateral rocks. One side down, back to center, other side more down, and back to center, just back and forth. Create a slower pace in the body. And rising up. Let's move our blanket or towel out of the way and set ourselves up for coming onto our backs. If there is a way you like to transition, like using the core, maybe holding onto the legs, you can, or just meet us there in whichever transition works for you. And then we get to give ourselves a giant hug and rock side to side. So you are safe, you are strong, you are open, and everyone's at different levels of that. But what we can do is bring more breath, more focus, more attention to ourselves, give ourselves the movements, make the right choices that really bring us to a state of more harmony. We actually have a lot of control in that, which is nice. And then from here, take the soles of the feet down and baby bridge. Arms alongside of you, press into the feet are about hips distance apart. Take a little baby lift of the pelvis and wake up the inner thighs a little bit. If you feel like you'd like to travel more up through that posterior chain and that feels good, you can begin to take the lower rib cage, middle rib cage, a little more of the upper rib cage up, maybe scoot the shoulder blades a little closer in and breathe here. Arms can stay down. You could go for another interlacing if that feels good. I like to sometimes just play the watermelon. That just sounded like a ripe watermelon. To just set my hands on my belly here. Just focus on the breathing and the movement that's there. Inhale. And exhale, come all the way down. Lift your heels if you need to. If your knees bother you on that transition, lift the heels up. There'll be a little more clearance for the spine to come down. Hug the knees back in. And then from here, we're gonna change it up a little bit. We're gonna rock forward and back, and come all the way to seated. That just stimulates the spine a little bit. And grab our prop from the beginning, what we're sitting on, and come back to that space where we started, that same seated position, having done all of that movement and breath. And I'll take you through my favorite meditative mudra and breathing practice. So turning the palms up. You can do this with one palm, so if you're ever driving or something like that, or I probably shouldn't say that, keep yourself 10 and 2. But any moment that you're not, and you can give total focus to this, you could do this without the hand movements and just the breathing, or with the hand. So the inhale allows the hands to softly open, and the exhale brings the pinky fingers and the thumbs to touch. And the inhale opens the hands gently. Exhale, pointer finger and thumb to touch. Go ahead and close your eyes. Inhale, softly open the hands like a flower blooming. Exhale, middle finger and thumb to touch. Inhale, opening. Exhale, ring finger and thumb to touch. Inhale, opening. And exhaling, choosing any finger to come to the thumb. Inhaling, opening. Any other finger to come to the thumb. Opening, always on the inhale, the exhale, finger to thumb. Last one, any other finger to thumb. Inhale, open. Exhale, palms down on the knees or the thighs. Let the elbows be really slack, shoulder blades soft. Close the eyes and come into Samavriti, which is even inhalation, even exhalation. Don't pick it apart. Maybe think about a 5 count in breath and a 5 count exhale. If one of those needs to be a little longer, the inhale or the exhale, that's just fine. Be really organic with it. Slowing down your pace. When the breath is hurried, the thoughts tend to hurry. When the breath is calm, the thoughts tend to be more capable of slowing down. Bring your hands together to your heart. Take a moment to draw into your center and bring focus to what matters most to you. I hope that you will put yourself at the top of your list as well. And let anything else that feels like it's just surface, that it doesn't matter, let that roll off your back. So just think about a duck kind of gently going along in a pond, and those droplets of water just rolling off the duck feathers. Take a deep breath in, sigh it out, shake it out. And if you would like to take a Shavasana, roll down onto your mat and rest as long as you would like. I hope that you have a better rest of your day, rest of your week, and thank you so much for being wise enough to look for a way to address your difficult day, your terrible day, and bring yourself closer to home base at your heart. If you got any value to this video, please do hit subscribe, the notification bell. Let me know how it goes in the comments. I always answer any questions, and if you have requests, I always make videos off of requests as well. I hope that you have a beautiful rest of your day. Namaste.